Let's get to some ways that we can sort it out to make sure that we've got the time for that.
Yeah, and again, I mean, in that context, of course, you've just been describing, is the kind of the word service and service orientation. That model is the thing that allows you to extend out to the kind of Web 2.0 world we talked about, and indeed paradigms like cloud and software as a service kind of all rely on the fundamental view that says we now have a componentized view of how we put together our business that allows us to be more dynamic in our response to market opportunity, market threat, market change, but is actually allowing us then to leverage all that great new technology wave which is coming from with cloud, for example. And again, that's off the topic, but the point is it kind of makes some assumptions, and I think it's fair 5 or 6 years into this kind of whole paradigm, this iteration of the IT world, to make some assumptions now that the right way about going to assemble your IT capabilities to try and publish sets of services that are more meaningful for business. And getting that granularity right, the next chart is really suggestive of sets of formalized methodologies, some of which are open standards now, that talk around how you start to analyse your business either from a top-down point of view or a bottom-up point of view, and a way of actually talking business and IT collaboratively together in the middle to try and build, in this terminology, a service model, so to speak, that says, actually, this is the 80-20 rule of what's running my business. These are the things I need to maintain. These are the ones I need to build service level agreements around. These are the ones I need to optimise and use all the capabilities, all those bright peoples in the business department, within sales or within supply or within HR or whatever it is, that actually can apply their best thinking around optimising the process. We need to enable that.
I think there is a small business, large business skew on this thing as well. So the things on the left that are being described are very much applicable to any business. So understanding what your business is, how it's structured, and then understand what it's trying to deliver, and then work out how best IT can map onto that delivery. 10-person company, 1,000-person company, 100,000-person company, those rules apply.
Yeah.
When you get into the much bigger companies, it's both a benefit. A, you've got a department that is designed around doing that kind of stuff, and they've been hopefully specialists in their field, so they're good at it. So that's a plus, and also they've got the remit to do it. In smaller organisations, a lot of this stuff has to happen along the way by people that are also doing their day jobs. So that does make it harder, but it doesn't stop the fact that these are the same kind of steps that you need to work through. Moving on.
Yep. So again,
I'm sorry, before you start on that one, I just got a terrific comment, and I have to put to you right now. It's real questions, not how can we sort it out, but what does this do for us? And the guy says that the CTO hasn't got the cojones to challenge. But I love it when we get mild obscenity in our comments.
Interesting.
It really grabs my attention.
I'll write that one down.
Yeah. It's basically, we talk about this world of the CIO and everything.
Absolutely.
But actually what happens still is the technology organisation in many is still the junior partner.
No, absolutely. I think that there is that almost deference at times, but it varies by industries in my experience. So telco environments, which we'll talk about a couple of examples in a second, where technology is much more core to the business model and maybe perhaps a little bit more receptive to change and have a little bit more proximity to the CIO, to the boardroom, is a little bit more closely knit, perhaps, than some other industries like manufacturing or distribution. So I certainly recognise that. And one of the kind of responses, of course, is this whole method around governance. It's a big question, a big G around governance. And so we've now, as IBM, published through the Opens Group now, the formal method that we've been using for the last 3 years, because we recognise that's one of the kind of things that inhibits the kind of cultural change aspect of this discussion. So we can make lots of statements, as we've been doing this morning, about collaborating and business and IT using the same vocabulary, etc. But it's really around there are now methods that, and in fact tools that implement the method as well, to keep you really honest. In the absence of any other device that allows and encourages the business and IT to work more close together, you can actually make recourse to a process and a method that exists off the shelf now. So we recognise that it's a common problem, but really it's about, at the end of the day, it's around people. I mean, being productive is around getting smart people together that know about their job, that have got a real passion about what they're trying to do and trying to make improvements. And businesses that are trying to innovate and businesses that respect their people value will recognise that. And so again, you can put in method where there's an absence of any other process to do that. And again, it varies by industry, it varies by size of company, but I think you do need to give some help from that kind of cultural aspect, and that's a much more softer skill around emotional intelligence and stuff, where there's no real answer. There's no one answer, at least, to
Well,
that.
the anecdote I can remember was about, you talk to the COO and he'd say, yeah, this is where we're expanding, and this is the cost benefit, and this is the state of blah blah blah, and all very businessy. And you talk around. Imagine, go around the board. I'm not going to give the whole thing. Go to the CIO and you say, yeah, well, we've just installed Oracle 10.3.15.2, and well, that worked okay, and now we're going to look at Exchange, and it's got no business relevance whatsoever. But the thing that gets lost is that the theory is that the IT guy has to somehow become a business person, and I think that's a big mistake. It's this: the IT guy has to be the best possible. The IT director has to be the best possible IT guy in the organisation. He has to understand exactly what technology is bringing to the business, but see it in a way that makes sense to the business, and not see it from a technical perspective.
So very brief, because as you're up against it, is that a question of sort of, sometimes sort of like saying to the business, if you don't do this, then there will be a big fail happening somewhere.
So some fear, uncertainty and doubt, that's one strategy that works, but it's about being savvy in that previous diagram. That word, there's some political element how you need to operate inside your business organisation, and different hierarchies and different rules apply depending on the kind of maturity or size of your business. But actually just being savvy really about, yes, understanding what's available to, hopefully as an IT director, you kind of get a view of what the industry has and what the vendors have to help support you, and the skills of your people and how you need to progress those skills. At the end of the day, you've got to be in the room thinking and talking and articulating in the sense that the CFO or the guy who's funding your projects understands the value that's going to come to him. And we use this phrase around instrumentation. If we talk about working smart inside IBM, there's a big story around how you put your metrics in place through that whole discussion, from the whiteboard in the boardroom through to the design of your business process, through to implementation of your application, all the way along the line, going back to a metric that this is what you told me, Mr. Sales Director or Mr. CFO. This is what you're interested in measuring, and that's the value that we've just given you that metric back. Tick in the box, please. Give me some more money. And that's the kind of way it needs to work. And just building a culture of change along those kind of dynamics is what we're trying to promote.
That's pragmatic.
Yep.
Okay, now we need to keep moving on.
So I was just going to, very, very quickly, just to say, in the same way we have heterogeneous complexity in IT architectures, the same can apply in the process context. So doing business process management properly is not a panacea as well. You can still create issues in terms of maintenance cost and difficulty and agility if you don't recognise right at the outset, as you're modelling this process between Fred and Madge and whoever else in your organisation, that change in the process and variability is something you have to manage. So that's just a kind of an aide-memoire to remember that it's just as important at the process level as it is at the IT level. And I'll talk about one specific example of how that manifests in a second.
Absolutely. And I'm just flicking to the questions, Tim, if I may.
I thought you did that, yeah.
Yeah. Someone's asked the question, do you generally feel that SOA is the only way to move forward?
Exactly what I was going to ask you right now.
And that is a fantastic segue into my next slide. And the answer is no, frankly, because if you start thinking about it from that point of view, SOA being a thing, then it's just like we did in the past, and
it's like buying,
you're already lost.
It's like buying a CRM or
it's not a thing. And actually, what I've got written in my notes is not about service-oriented architecture. It's about having an architecture that's oriented about services. The services are the key thing, and starting to think in terms of services, starting to think about what IT is delivering to the business, what the business is, etc. All that stuff I said before is a mindset shift. It's a way of thinking about how you put your applications together, how you put your IT together, how you work between IT and the business in a different way, and that absolutely is the way forward. But the reason why we see SOA initiatives are failing is because SOA initiatives, when they're seen as a thing, you put all your hopes into getting something around a technology that gives you SOA, and maybe the organisation hasn't changed. And so you've just ended up with yet another one of these very complicated pictures.
Well,